On today's show, we're talking to a man who went from being a literal rocket scientist to becoming a full-time real estate investor, focusing on the co-living strategy. I'm Kathy Fettke, and welcome to The Real Wealth Show.
You're listening to The Real Wealth Show with Kathy Fettke, the real estate investor's resource.
Today, we're talking to Miller McSwain about his journey from quitting his W-2 to becoming a full-time real estate investor. We'll dig into the co-living strategy, how it can produce more cash flow, and I do mean a lot more, and how you can reach financial freedom a little faster using this strategy. But before we get into the show, our other podcast, Real Estate News for Investors, just hit its 1500th episode. So if you haven't listened to that podcast, make sure to visit the show notes where we include a link. And as a thank you to all of our listeners, we're giving away a PDF on the top 5 cities to invest in today. Just visit realwealth.com/1500. Miller, welcome to the Real Wealth Show.
Hey, Kathy, thanks for the invite. Super excited to chat with you.
Me too. And we got to go back to the beginning, the origin story. You were a rocket scientist, is that right?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. And you chose real estate over rockets. Why is that?
For a lot of reasons, honestly. It was it was a great job, right? And it was something that I had trained for, for years, going through college and all of that. So my parents definitely thought I was crazy when I spent 5 years getting this degree and just 2 or 3, years later dumped it. But it was definitely very time consuming, for sure. And I just didn't think the trade-off was quite worth it. Not that it's super low paying, but honestly, it was like pretty close to it was just like a normal engineering job. And you're trading a lot of time for what I thought I could be worth more. So at the time we were doing house hacks and buying properties and all that. And I was like, I like this idea of planting these seeds and producing income that lasts forever much better than just working for this company,
Yeah, I get it. The big trade-off is you own your time or someone else owns your time.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that was exactly my thought.
I remember when I first got into real estate, it all started from me just being so mad because I had a busy morning with 2 little kids trying to get them to school. If anyone has kids, it is like an Olympic event trying to get them fed, dressed, out the door with their homework. And I was maybe 10 minutes late to work. And when I walked in, this librarian, secretary just looks at her watch, looks at me. And I was like, you don't own me. And then I was like, ooh, you actually do own me from 9 to 5. And I can't have this. So if you love your job and your work, then you don't mind being owned, I suppose. But but there's nothing like owning your own time and having freedom. So you were already investing in real estate when you had a full-time job?
Yeah, my wife and I started, or she was my fiance at the time, but we bought our first house hack right out of college, or actually a couple months prior to graduating college. And so we moved into that and we're renting out rooms there. So we considered, well, if we're going to do something, we might as well house hack. It's like such a low risk, such a no-brainer strategy to do. So we were living in Tennessee and then, going to school. And then the idea was, well, we'll move somewhere else and we'll buy a house hack there and we'll get jobs and, things will be great. So we started looking around the country and we were interested in living somewhere in the Rocky Mountains. So kind of honed in on Colorado and did a bunch of data analysis and drove out there and camped around the state for 3 or 4 weeks and figured out which cities we would want to live in and could also be good rental markets at the same time. And we landed on Colorado Springs. That's where we ended up purchasing.
Not a bad choice.
Yeah, it's definitely good. We enjoy it as far as, when you're house hacking, you need to enjoy the place. So we like the views, we like the things to do. And then at the same time, it had really good like rent to price ratio at the time, compared to surrounding markets anyway, like that were in the state as well. So
not as much today, right?
Yeah. Now you have to do something super creative, which is, what we're doing.
What we're going to talk about. But before we do, for our audience who maybe just doesn't know what house hacking is, will you explain that?
Yeah, I would say that it's just producing income off of your primary residence in some fashion. So the traditional methods or the most common ones would be you live in part of the house and you short term out the other part, or you live in part of the house and midterm part of it, or you live in one or two or three of the rooms and then you rent out the other rooms. I would say that those are the most common ones for single family houses. Those are kind of your options.
Yeah, and I'm still house hacking. I'm still
Yeah.
doing it. Yep, and Rich and I've done it since the beginning of our marriage because we are in a high priced market and
Yeah.
originally just outside of San Francisco Bay Area, and we would house hack our rentals. We would get like a pretty big rental house and then rent out a room or two to a friend to be able to afford the big yard and everything we wanted. And then with our first home it was the same thing. And it is, it's house hacking because it is such a hack.
Yeah.
You've got someone helping you pay your mortgage or pay your rent, and you can often get a bigger place as a result of that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we did it we just sort of stopped house hacking like 2 days ago. We just moved, which is kind of a welcome relief in some ways. But yeah, so we house hacked a couple of properties, and yeah, my wife and I, we always took the smaller part. So we were always in the basement, and renting out the rooms upstairs, which she was super cool, like allowing us to do that. By the way, like
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't choose the basement.
yeah, yeah. Well, maybe that's why we got burnt out and quit doing it. Maybe you guys are
Yeah.
doing it, and much more longevity. So we did that, and then I guess we're not exactly house hacking now, but what we decided to do was rent out the space that we were living in, and then go rent somewhere in the mountains that costs the same amount. So it's like, so net we're still in the same financial position, but we're just kind of in a place just that we enjoy more. So we still got to use that 5% down and live there for a year or 2 years really, and then just kind of arbitraged and moved elsewhere, kind of.
Okay. And the 5% down for those again who don't know. And I always just want to like drill this in that you can get your first home with just 3% down. It's an FHA loan, even not FHA. There's banks that will do it because it's your primary. So never ever do I want to hear the excuse that you don't have the down payment, because you do. And I love what you said also, that you searched for a place that would work. You drove around, you found a place that would work for a lot of reasons and settled there. And a lot of people aren't willing to do that. So good on you. And it turns out the place you settled is pretty awesome. So
Yeah,
win-win.
and I'll just say real quick. So even if you have a spouse or a fiance or whatever, there are probably still ways to make it work. So in our case, we found each of the house hacks had basically a separate basement. So it could feel like a duplex if we set it up right, and
Mhm.
that's what we did. So like the first one, for example, it was a ranch. That was like 1,100 square feet upstairs and 1,100 downstairs, and we just entered through the garage and the stairs were right there. And so we went downstairs and built a little kitchenette, but otherwise it was ready to go with a couple bedrooms and a living room and a bathroom down there. So totally doable with a spouse.
You do not have to share a kitchen. You do not have to share a refrigerator. That's probably the worst part, or a bathroom.
Mhm.
You can siphon it off, put a little wall or a door between. Yeah, that's definitely how we do it too. Okay, so then what?
So after those couple, now we had the experience with the strategy that we do, which is co-living, renting out rooms with a built-in community. That's kind of how I describe it. So it's not like a boarding house type situation where you're converting all the space in the house to bedrooms, which is a little bit more popular now. It's kind of going around because it produces a lot of cash flow. Instead, we're still renting out, rooms, and we have 6, 7, even our biggest is 8 bedrooms, but we still have a big living room. We still, furnish the kitchen to where it feels like a short-term rental, pots, pans, plates, bowls, all that to make the experience great. We do community events for the house to kind of increase the relationships there, and which improves retention, reduces turnover, all sorts of things that we do there. So we really honed in that strategy and had that experience. And then we started investing with partners after that. So we bought 4 or 5 other properties since then.
So do you buy bigger properties to have more rooms, basically more
Yeah.
bedrooms?
Yeah, exactly. The bigger, the better. I mean, we're under contract on a place right now that's 3,200 square feet, and we're going to add like 500 or 600 square feet by converting this like huge 3-car garage. So yeah, like getting close to 4,000 square feet.
Do you have any issues with zoning or permits or parking? Because that's if it's an 8-bedroom house, you need 8 cars, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, parking is the biggest limiter. I will say that is a downside of this strategy, is that there's not as many properties that will work for it as you would think. So whenever we're looking on the MLS, only about 10% of the properties actually have adequate parking. So like immediately, your deal flow is like pretty constricted. So yeah, you absolutely have to look for that great parking. Now it kind of depends on the city. Like if you look at Colorado Springs, there's no public transport, or like it's not great.
Yeah.
So over the years, we've had 80 tenants, and just throughout all the houses, and only one of them that I know of has not had a car. So
Mm.
you're right. Basically, 100% of people need cars. Now, if you're in, you know, I don't know, like downtown Seattle or Denver or whatever, maybe you can get away with less people having cars. And the way that you can kind of tell, you can look up the walk score for a property. You can see it on the Zillow listing, or you can go to walkscore.com. And anyway, so the higher the walk score is, the better you're able to get around without a car. So the higher that is, the less parking you would need. But you definitely want to err on the safe side and go for more parking for sure.
And then do you put locks on each bedroom?
Yeah, so that is one thing we do. So they're all, electronic. So we can set door codes for the front door, for the bedroom doors. Even like we'll rent out sheds in the backyard. Like if someone needs extra storage, there's an electronic padlock that works with the same app, and they get access there. The cleaners get access to the doors, and the handyman, and it's just super easy to do remotely because of the locks for sure.
And do you have like house rules that people need to abide by within the lease? I'm just curious. Like you said that the kitchen's already furnished, but somebody brings all their crap from their kitchen and just like,
Yeah.
overwhelmed it. I mean, is any kind of lease agreement there?
Yeah, we definitely have a lot of rules. I will say,
You have to. You have
yeah,
to when you have that many people living together.
yeah, well, and I think our lease is like everyone's lease. Like it's evolved over time. Like you encounter some issue and you're like, "Ooh, I got to add a clause in there for that one so it doesn't happen again." So we definitely have a lot of things in there that are there just in case. So for example, like guest policy, we have in there that guests can stay six nights over the month. I think is what we have, or like 6 nights every 4 weeks or something. Now in reality, we don't really know how often there's guests staying overnight and all that. So I'm sure there's houses where people have girlfriends over that stay like 3 weekends or maybe even 4 weekends, or whatever. But just the fact that we have that in the lease means that if we start to get complaints about it, like
Yeah.
if there is some sort of ruckus, okay, now we can enforce that clause. So we have a lot of things in there like that. But there's definitely very common rules that we have that are enforced all the time for sure.
Like
So for
quiet
the common,
time and
yes,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. Quiet time, wash your dishes, don't leave them out. Take out the trash when it gets full. So the important ones like that, we have pasted on like a laminated sheet, and those kind of go around the house and in the bathroom and kitchen and places like that.
Some of them, I was really into this for a while. I syndicated a co-living technology platform 10 years ago. It was the CTO of realtor.com. I mean, it had a lot of potential, and we were going to do these little co-living houses exactly like you're talking about. I ended up those guys were trying to spend money like it was like a startup, right? So I put a quick end to that. But I'm really into the concept because I think it's so wise at a time when there is such a need. And they did have so many rules because it's so many people living together, right? What are for the landlord or for you, for the investor, how, why this strategy? Why do you choose it over just medium term rental, short term, or whatever else is out there?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the strategy is for the investor that's looking to do small residential, right? So if you're thinking about small residential, whether you're trying to purchase a primary and house hack it, or whether you just have, 80 grand that you're ready to put, 20% down on the single family house. In that sort of scenario, you're probably thinking about, yeah, a long-term rental, which, not a lot of work, right? Like super low on the management front, but definitely low or negative cash flow typically these days. If you're putting down 20% or 5% or 25%. So if you are looking to get cash flow and you're willing to kind of trade some work for that, right? You are thinking about, yeah, the short term, the midterm, or the co-living. And out of those, I would say that the difficulty with short term rentals right now, if you're going to be purchasing in a city, like in a metro and an urban area, is definitely the regulations, right? Like they've been hit super hard over the last, 3, 4, or 5 years with the regulations. Now, if you're going to buy in a vacation market, I think they're still fantastic. Like you could still produce a ton of cash flow and still have favorable regulations, but that's kind of a difficult piece there. Um, Now with midterms, I compare those to co-living, as they do produce less income than co-living. Co-living is like on par with short-term rental as far as income goes, if you buy the right property and it's big, like we're talking about. So it just produces less cash flow for less work. So if you're kind of comparing co-living and midterms, both of them legally are like often pretty good, right? Like midterms don't have the same issues as short terms legally, and neither does co-living. But if you are willing to put in more work, co-living is going to produce, like the houses that we have would probably rent for 2,200 or so to a family. And on some of them, we get 7,000 as co-living. So it's
That's
like
massive.
substantial.
Yeah. Yeah, that's worth the effort of trying to figure out how to do this. I had mentioned to you because I was lucky enough to be asked to write a testimonial for you. And I many years ago met a guy who was maybe in his 20s, and he had just come out of college where people co-live all the time, right? You're just always living with other people and kind of used to it. And he just thought, wow, this is a great way. I could buy a house and rent the rooms out. He house hacked it, bought his first property, then saw how well that worked and just started to do this model. This was probably decades ago. And I always thought, what a cool thing, but I just never pulled the trigger. I never went for it, even though like I said, I invested in this co-living technology platform. So I so believe in it. But how do you get over that fear of doing it? Like, how do you promote it? It's just so not normal. Like, it's not your normal,
Yeah.
get a property manager and just, rent your property out, or how
Yeah.
do you rent the rooms?
Yeah, I think there is still definitely the fear that you're talking about. That fear still is associated with it because the strategy is still in its infancy. Like, not that it hasn't been around for a while, but there definitely hasn't been education about it, right? Like,
Hmm.
when short-term rentals became popular, in 2013 or 15 or something like that, right? There weren't any books or anything like that about it then either. So I'm sure the early adopters were, kind of afraid. But now, like, oh my goodness, hop on, your podcast or YouTube or whatever, and you can know exactly how to run a short-term rental. So I think that fear will go away now that there's more YouTube content and now there are podcasts about co-living and all that. But yeah, as far as filling the rooms goes, I mean, the main thing that we do is just list on the online platforms, just like you would with a long term, just like you would with a midterm. Now, the platforms can be a little bit different.
You do it on
Yeah.
Airbnb?
So it depends. If you're going to furnish the rooms, so I mean, that's a whole discussion there, but you
Right.
could furnish the rooms
So you
or
could
you could
furnish them or
not.
not furnish them?
Yeah. So
Okay.
you definitely always have to furnish the shared spaces. So
Hmm.
the living room has the couch and the TV, and the kitchen, like I said, has everything that you need to cook besides your food. But as far as the bedrooms go, it kind of depends on the market and kind of depends on the tenant demographic that you have. So like in our market, for example, we have a lot of military. And so they are, guys coming out of the barracks that are used to living with like 5 other dudes in their room or whatever. So
Right.
they're super happy to just have like their own room, right?
Yeah. It's a step up.
And yeah, it's an improvement for them. And so they're staying here for a while. Like, they're probably stationed at one of our bases for like 3 years. So if they're going to be staying there longer, I think it is better to have an unfurnished room
Mhm.
because, one, whenever they bring their furniture in, they're more likely to stay longer, right? Like, if they
Mm.
if they decide that they want to move, it's like, well, I got to call my buddies and I got to move
Yeah.
this heavy bed and heavy dresser. So they're more likely to stay longer. But two, now it's just kind of their own space. Like, it doesn't feel like a hotel anymore. It's like, oh yeah, I put that painting up. Oh yeah, those are my sheets. That's my bed. That's my dresser. So I think it kind of helps on that end. Now, the downside is you do have more furniture coming in and out of your house. So your walls, they're going to get some scuffs, right?
Yeah.
But then if you decide to furnish, then that would be more for, students who are there for shorter term, interns, just people that err on that shorter side. That's probably or potentially a better option. But if you are furnished, you could list on Airbnb. If you are furnished, you could list on Furnish Finder. But if you're not, then it's places like Zillow. Zillow has a whole room rental section now. So like
Whoa. I didn't know that.
they're all in on it now. So
Mm.
that's, positive outlook for the strategy. Um, Facebook Marketplace, apartments.com, and then there's like some room specific sites like Roomies, Roomster. Those are kind of some of your options.
Brilliant. Wow. Love it. Okay. And so each room gets its own lease, each tenant in each room. Is
Yeah.
there like a
Yep.
master lease? Like, is there one person leasing the whole thing, or is it just each one gets their own?
No, I mean, we definitely want to keep everyone as separate as we can. I mean, just like for the same reason that we wouldn't want people bringing their own furniture in the living room. It's like if one guy brings the couch and then he leaves, like, oh, you got to find the new person who's going to bring the couch in. Same idea with the lease. Yeah, we wouldn't want one person on the master lease, then they leave. Okay, now you got to shuffle around. So yeah, it's just 6, 7, 8 different leases.
And then what if, I imagine there's rules on this, but what if someone's just like not working out? They like nobody likes them. Is
Yeah.
there any way to get rid of them?
Yeah. So yes, we have encountered this.
I'm
uh,
sure.
I mean, I think if you screen well, then it does happen less often. So
Mhm.
I mean, you need to screen with the strategy better than any other strategy there is because there's people sharing a space, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, talking to rental references is a big piece of that. Whenever someone does want to move in and they want a tour, we get an existing resident to give them the tour. So that way, there's kind of a vibe check going on to make sure people fit in the environment and everything. But still, some bad eggs definitely do make it through on occasion for sure.
Mhm.
So like I said, we've had 80 residents, over the years, and we've had we've had 3 people that we've had to kick out. So, it's like 3 or 4% is kind of what we've seen. And the way that we've done it, we've never had to do an eviction. We've gotten around that every time. And the way that we've done it is we have cameras that are in the shared spaces. So of course, no bedrooms, no bathrooms, nothing like that. But just like watching the kitchen, watching the living room, and then watching any entrances or exits to the house. Which these aren't constantly monitored or anything. It's just like if there's an issue, we can hop on and see what's been going on. So, for example, we had an incident where this one girl said that this guy pulled a gun on her and threatened her,
Jeez.
and I'm like, whoa,
What?
okay. And I go watch the footage and like it just straight up doesn't happen. And then she starts like not at all. He's just talking to her. Then she makes these other claims and
Jeez.
whatever. Just turns out she was like a compulsive liar kind of thing, I think. And anyway, and then we had other issues of her like running the blender at 5 a.m. and everyone's upset about that. So the way that we're able to get her out is we gather, we create an email with a summary of all these lease violations, and then attach, videos of proof, like hard proof showing what they are, and then we just say, hey, we'll mutually end the lease. Please move out within X number of days. If you agree to do that today, if you agree to it today, then we won't pursue eviction. But if you don't agree to it, like we're going to start the eviction tomorrow. And everyone, every single time, has just agreed to leave because like they see the evidence, like they know that they're going to lose, and that's costly, and nobody wants to go through an eviction. So
Wow. Okay. Amazing. I'm so impressed. So are there certain markets that are better than other markets? Like you said, sometimes downtown, but then it's going to be expensive if you're in a city, right? Much more expensive than in a suburb. But where's the best place or how do you know it's going to work? Probably by a
yeah,
school, right?
yeah. There's a lot of things. So I mean, I guess the main thing you need to think about the tenant demographic that you're going to rent to. So with midterm rentals, you've heard about traveling nurses. That's like the classic midterm renter. Like it's just like the classic demographic. On the co-living side, just like the classic demographic that probably exists in a lot of markets is the just lower income worker. So anywhere from, in most markets, that's anywhere from like the minimum wage person to the guy or gal that makes like 60 grand a year. Anywhere kind of in that band means that whenever they rent a studio apartment, which is probably the cheapest option, if they're doing that, they're probably spending more than 30% of their income on rent, which is, personal finance experts say you should spend less than that. Yeah. So that's the kind of group that you could target. Now that those exist in a lot of cities, but the way that you could narrow your search down is to look where that unaffordability is the worst, right? Like where people are spending the most amount of money on rent. So typically that's going to be, your metros, your Seattles, your Denvers, your Austins, those kinds of places. You can definitely find that demographic there. Or if you're looking for students, right, there's tons of cities that have universities. So that could be another good spot.
Perfect. All right, Miller. Well, thank you so much for joining me here on the Real Wealth Show. It's fascinating.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for having me, Kathy, and hope to come back soon.
And thank you for joining me here on The Real Wealth Show. And as a reminder, if you'd like to download our top 5 cities to invest in, you can get that PDF for free by just going to realwealth.com/1500.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are provided for informational purposes only and should not be construed as an offer to buy or sell any securities or to make or consider any investment or course of action. For more information, go to realwealthshow.com.